A blessed day, everyone. I am Jamela, and welcome again to Book and I. This is a program that will look on different books and their insights, which will help us to grow more in faith and practice. Redemption and the City. That is the title of this chapter that shows us how Israel, as an exilic model, helps us to understand the relationship of the church to the city in the New Testament times and even today. How should we really live as Christians in the city? How useful cities are in spreading the gospel. And lastly, what does the future look like according to God's design? That is what we are going to talk about in this chapter. God called the Jewish exile to accept and embrace the tension of the city for the sake of God's glory. And this is exactly what today's Christians are called to be and do as well. Like the Jews who existed as resident aliens during the time of the exiles, Christians were also called to live like them, as they were instructed not to hate the pagan city, but to be fully involved in its life, working for it and praying for it. It must be our attitude as well towards the city we are living in. Again, we must be a city within cities, a citizen of God's holy nation, while hoping for the best for each city, both in prayer and in action. And as we have learned how we should live in the city as believers through the life of the Jews during the exile, now let us see the strategy of the early church in terms of spreading the gospel through the cities. In the early church, God's redemptive mission no longer centered on a particular city such as Jerusalem or Babylon. All of the cities of the world become primary targets of God's mission. Paul, in the book of Acts, hops from one city to another. And one of the famous cities he got in is in Ephesus, which reveals several of the strengths of urban ministry. In this place, all the inhabitants of Asia visits from time to time to buy or sell, visit a relative, frequent the baths, attend a game in the stadium, watch a drama in the theater, or worship the goddess Artemis. By reaching the city, Paul reached all segments of society, which suggests that if the gospel is unfolded in the urban center, you can effectively reach the region and the surrounding society. Also, the elite and poor were mixed all together in the city. And in the early church, in the narrative of the New Testament, through the cities, Christians changed history and culture by winning the elites, as well as by identifying deeply with the poor. Lastly, from this chapter, one of the ways to ease the tension of the city perceived by Christians, we must look at God's design of the future awaiting us. The depiction of the place where God's light will shine for us forever is not pertaining to any rural area, but to a city. In the last chapters of the book of Revelation, when God's creational and redemptive intentions were fully realized, we see that the result is indeed a city. City is the place the Lord will reveal to make His people fully at home after the long journey ends. May this take off the negative perception that the Christians have regarding the city. Remember our identity distinct to the identity we have as ordinary citizens of the city we are living in. More than being part of man's community, we are people of God's holy nation. Being a citizen of God's holy kingdom never means that we will despise where we are settling now. Rather, it urges us to live as the best residents, hoping for its best. And this is the chapter of the book we have today. Hope you learned something and may the peace of Christ be with us all. Again, this is Book and I.